Louis Denbaum has worn many hats: CPA, lawyer, meditation teacher, entrepreneur, trainer, chief financial officer, general counsel, chief executive officer, law school professor, and most recently, relationship coach and communications consultant. After 2 failed marriages, Louis considered himself an expert in creating disagreements, escalating them, and avoiding finding resolutions. He decided to hang up his boxing gloves and search for a better way. He has been a student of relationships and communication ever since. He's field tested. In addition to relationship coaching, Louis is presently bringing communication skills, stress reduction techniques, and executive coaching to businesses, for those of you that are employers as well. Louis is the co-author with his wife, Diane. Where's Diane?
Here I am.
There she is. Of the book, Madly in Love Forever, A Guide to True and Lasting Love. Louis has been a resident of Fairfield since 1996. He and his wife, Diane, have a blended family of 5 young adult children. Please help me warmly welcome Louis Denbaum, who will be talking to us tonight about why can't I connect.
Good evening, fellow Toastmasters, viewers at home, and all of you incredible special guests. Thank you for coming. Welcome. Thank you for coming. Welcome. Folks, tonight is about connection. Connection at home and connection at work. What gets in the way? When I say the word connection, what one word comes to mind for you? Call them out. One word.
Electricity.
Electricity. Yeah. Communication. Plugged in. Communication. Friends. All of these go into building connection. When I think about the word connection, I think about the word respect. Respect between 2 people. And when that respect exists, sharing can flow very easily. What gets in the way of this connection? When we put things in between us and the other person that act as separators, we destroy that connection. These separators can be anger, jealousy, pride, prejudice, ego. Another separator is a disagreement. How do we maintain connection when we have a disagreement? Cum dilatorum hominam et odio viti orum. Anyone know who said that? I did, that's right, but who was I quoting? 5th century. This Latin phrase has loosely been translated over the years as love the sinner, hate the sin. And folks, that says it all. Good night, have a good evening. Now, I have spent the last 10 years or so studying relationships, as Jean said, after 2 failed marriages. And I've come to the conclusion that we need to create win-win results, but remain connected. What I'm going to share with you tonight is a process that I use to resolve disagreements and stay connected. Now also, you don't have to have a disagreement to use what I'm going to share with you tonight. That will also create connection. Before we begin, I have some advice for just the men. So ladies, cover your ears. Particularly the men who are in relationship with a woman. I have summarized all of my years of studying relationships, and I put it on a plaque that hangs on the wall in my bedroom. And I really wanted to bring it in to share with you men tonight, but my wife has nailed it to the wall. So I've done the next best thing, and I've taken a photo of it. There are many theories about arguing with a woman. None of them work. Before I knew this, though, I really thought, for once, I had won an argument with my wife. And here's a picture of me celebrating my victory. Rick, can we turn the second switch from the left down? Okay. There I am, celebrating my victory. And here's a photograph of me later that night, sleeping on the couch. So men, my advice is, learn this process I'm going to teach you tonight, or get a really comfortable couch. This process works equally well in the bedroom or the boardroom. In fact, I'm going to use a assume that I'm the sales manager of a small business. And one of my salespeople, we'll call her Mary, is upset with me. She thinks I'm not treating her fairly. And I'm upset because she's telling everybody this without coming to me. So here's how I would proceed. The first step, external preparation. Now, I'm not going to wait around for some magical event to occur where Mary and I start to talk. I'm going to be proactive. I'm going to call her up and arrange a conversation. And I'm going to arrange it for a time that's good for both of us. And I'm going to have it occur in a place that's safe and private. And I'm going to establish an exact amount of time, 30 minutes, 40 minutes. And here's the important part. I'm going to ask Mary to agree to 2 rules for this conversation. First, that we both stay for the full amount of time. Nobody bolts early. And second, that we both commit to not blaming, shaming, or attacking the other person. So here's what this could look like. Hi, Mary. Louis here. I know we've had some work relationship problems lately, and I'd like to have a conversation with you about it. Are you open to that? Great. I know you're more of a morning person than an afternoon person. Would 10 o'clock Friday be good for you? I'd like to have this conversation in our conference room so we'll have some privacy. And how about if we allocate 45 minutes to this discussion? Great. Oh, by the way, Mary, I'd like us to agree to 2 other rules to this conversation. The first is that we both stay the full 45 minutes. And second, let's commit to not blaming, shaming, or attacking the other person. Agreed? Great. See you there. So now we've laid the foundation for this conversation. The second step is internal preparation. I've got to prepare myself mentally and emotionally. So, the day arrives, and I do 4 things. The first is I take 4 or 5 cleansing breaths. Follow along with me. I put my hand on my abdomen and breathe in deeply, and slowly exhale all the way out. I do this 4 or 5 times, and this oxygenates my blood. Next, I remind myself of why I'm having this conversation. I want to create a win-win result and remain connected with Mary. Next, I get rid of 2 assumptions that I'm carrying around with me. The first is that Mary mind and communication style is exactly the same as mine. And second, that this is all because of her. She created this mess. I release those assumptions because they're counterproductive. So that's what I call the self-management part of preparing for this conversation. I don't have control over the circumstances that I find myself in, but I do have control over my reaction. Next step, opening the conversation. So I arrive at the conference room 5 minutes early. So I'm there and I'm ready. And when Mary arrives, I want to make 4 points. I want to have some small talk just to warm the atmosphere. I want to say something about the situation from both our perspectives. And then I want to say something about the situation from my perspective. And finally, I want to encourage her to tell her side of the story. Here's what this could look like. Hi, Mary. Thanks for coming. Brutal out there, isn't it? God, this winter's been incredibly cold. Mary, I know that this situation has been really hard for both of us. From my perspective, I feel like I treat you the same as everyone else. Would you please share with me your side of the story? Step 4, active listening, also known as reflective listening. This is the hardest part of the conversation, especially for us men. It's also the most important tool that I'm going to discuss tonight. What is active listening? It has 2 elements. The first is focusing on what the other person is saying. I'm going to focus on what Mary is saying. I'm not planning my response to her, because if I do that, I can't actually focus on what she's saying. You know, I'm a guy, I can't do 2 things at once. So I'm focused on what she's saying. I use eye contact with her. I maintain eye contact. I use receptive body language. Not this. I lean into her so she knows that I'm aware that she's speaking. After an interval of this focusing on what she's saying, I then feed back to her what I heard her say. And I ask her if I've got it right, so she knows that I'm following along. And then I ask her if there's more to encourage her to keep speaking. Now, I know that when you see this technique in a minute or so, you're going to think, that is so unnatural. And I agree. It is unnatural because we're not used to doing it. But I assure you that if you learn this technique, and if you use it, it will start to become natural. And most importantly, you will get compliments from the person you're speaking with about how deeply you listened to him or her. So I'd like a volunteer from the audience to help me model this. How about that gorgeous woman over there? Come on up. We've never met before, have we? Yeah, I didn't think so, but you do look familiar. What's your name?
Diane.
Diane. Thank you. Thank you for volunteering.
I had no idea I was going to do this.
So Diane is going to tell Mary's side of the story using a card I've prepared for her, and I'm going to listen and feed back. Are you ready, Diane?
I'm ready.
Okay.
I'm ready and aggravated. You don't appreciate me. I am the top salesperson in the company, and you never stop in to tell me I'm doing a great job. I get no recognition from you.
Diane, so that I know that I'm following you, I'd like to tell you what I just heard. What I heard is that you're the top salesperson in the company, but you're upset because you're not getting recognition. Is that right?
Mm-hmm. Yes, it is.
Is there more, Mary?
Yeah. The other day, you stopped in to congratulate Joe for a sale he had just closed. Last month, I made a bigger sale, and you said nothing.
So what I hear you say, Diane, is that I congratulated Joe on a small sale and nothing about your bigger sale. Is that right?
That's right.
Is there more?
Yes. I say, we always win. I love my job, and I really love this company, Louis. I like working for you. And I work really hard. Our customers like me, but I can't stay here if I feel like I'm being treated unfairly and am not being recognized for the work that I do.
So Diane, what I heard was that you love your job, you love the company, our customers love you, but you can't stay here if you don't feel appreciated and recognized. Is that true?
That's right, yes.
Is there more?
No, that's good for now.
Diane,
Thank you.
thank you for sharing your side of the story with me. I really appreciate it. How about a hand for our volunteer?
Especially the first part sounded a little bit like blaming. Can you talk about that?
We're going to talk about blaming in a little bit. So, now that I understand Diane's side of the story, there's a next step. Now this step, asking questions, is not a sequential step. This is a tool that you can use if and when you need to. Now remember, the point of this discussion with Mary is to fully understand her side of the story. So asking questions is a way to get more information out. Now I start with open-ended questions. Who, what, where, when, and how. Anybody know what question word I didn't list?
Why?
Why? Why didn't I list why?
You'll never end it.
Why questions tend to be blaming and shaming. Why did you do that? Why didn't you follow the protocol and the procedures we have established? So I stay away from why questions, and I use the ones I've mentioned. That gives Mary a chance to bring out more of her story. Now, if I need very specific information from Mary, I ask a closed-ended question. So this is what that could look like. Mary, when you said it happened at the beginning of last week, do you remember? Did it happen on Monday or Tuesday? So you can see how I'm getting her to narrow down the information that I need. Now I don't use any of these questions to be accusatory, to blame or shame. Only seeking to get more information, to understand her perspective. So, if we're going to create a win-win situation, Mary has to understand my side of the story, which will be different than her side of the story. A friend of mine once said, when there's a disagreement, there's three things: his story, her story, and the truth. So I want to enroll Mary, in listening to my side of the story. So I ask her a question. Mary, I think I understand the situation from your perspective. Are you open to hearing the story from my perspective? Now, to tell my story, I have to again remember, not blaming, shaming, or attacking Mary. So how do I accomplish this? First and foremost, I use I statements. Statements that start with the word I. And at the same time, I must avoid using you statements, statements that start with you. Here's an example. You statement. You are selfish. Can you see how that's blaming and shaming? Rephrase it. Mary, when I see you keeping the best prospects for yourself, I have the opinion that you're acting selfishly. Again, see the difference. The you statement is an assassination of Mary's character. The I statement is merely my opinion of her behavior. Love the sinner, hate the sin. So now, armed with my I statements and really trying my best not to use you statements, I tell my side of the story. In my side of the story, I'm going to include the facts, just the facts. What I saw, what I heard, who did what. No opinions. Then I can get to my opinions, and my opinions, everyone has opinions. We can't avoid that. But I want to make sure that I never assert that my opinion is a fact. There's nothing more irksome than talking with someone when they start asserting that their opinion is a fact. The Iowa Hawkeyes are the best team in the NCAA. Fact. Once I get my opinions out, I can use I statements to talk about my feelings. I am angry. I was angry. I was sad. I was afraid. And then I can talk about my wants. I request that you, I want you to, and fill in the blank. Here's a very abbreviated version of what this could look like. Mary, last week, when I went in to congratulate Joe, you went and complained to Mo, Larry, and Curly. In my opinion, I felt that you were acting with bad judgment. I was angry. I want you, Mary, whenever you have something that bothers you, please come to me first and as soon as possible. So now we get to the last step, the resolution. Remember, what do we want? We want to create a win-win result. We want to keep that connection. It is not a win if you get what you want and destroy a relationship or weaken a relationship. And it's certainly not a win-win if you do that. So what do? I like to use the word common ground rather than compromise. I don't like to compromise. I feel like I'm giving something up. Anybody else feel like they don't like to compromise? Use the word common ground. And I let Mary go first. Mary, now that we both understand the situation from each other's perspective, how can we find the common ground? If we have conducted this conversation with respect, not blaming, not attacking, not shaming, seeking to fully understand the other person's perspective, we are well on our way to finding that common ground. I would like to share with you something that that great communicator of the 60s and 70s once said. Mick Jagger, lead singer of the world's greatest rock and roll band, the Rolling Stones, and that's a fact. Now, before Mick learned this process from me, this is what he sang. I can't get no satisfaction, and I try, and I try, and I try, no satisfaction. Mick definitely was not using the process. And then I was backstage. And I said, Mick, you're not getting any satisfaction. I got to teach you something. Taught him the process. Very quick learner. And Mick changed his tune, pun intended. And this is what he sang. You can't always get what you want, but if you try sometimes, you just might find you get what you need. Mick, thank you. Yeah. Showing us that if we use this process, we can get what we need and get more of what we want, creating that win-win. Tonight, we've looked at a process for resolving disagreements and most essentially remaining connected. This process has internal, external preparation, opening questions, active listening, asking open-ended and closed-ended questions, telling my story using I statements, avoiding you statements, and finding common ground. Now, we've covered a lot of ground, and I really know that you will not remember all of these points. If you remember one thing from this talk tonight, it is that you want to maintain the connection while you're creating the win-win. You never want to destroy the connection. That is not a win. I'd like to thank my wife, Diane, who's on this communication and connection journey with me, and she calls me out when I'm not living up to these high standards of communication. Thank you, wife. I also want to thank the Golden Speakers Toastmasters for inviting me to speak here tonight. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. And most of all, each and every one of you for coming out in this brutally cold weather. Thank you so much. And one last thought. In addition to recognizing that a win-win has to include connection, I do also hope that you'll start to use active listening, reflective listening, and I statements, two important tools. Madam, one last thing. One last thing. I'm jumping the gun here. I will be staying around for the refreshment part of this meeting. Please feel free to come up to me and ask any questions you want. It would be my great joy to answer those. Madam Toastmaster.
So I have a few questions that I jotted down for Louis. I swear I was not texting. Okay. And so I want to ask you these. The first one is, how did you and Diane acquire and develop these skills and techniques?
Okay. Diane and I have attended a lot of workshops on for couples and individually, and when we met and started dating, we realized that we had this in common. And it was fascinating for me to find another person who I could actually start engaging in these techniques with. And we just practiced. We read things together, and then we practiced. The one thing I love about my wife is that when we go to a workshop and we come back, she goes, okay, let's practice. Before that, I'd go and say, yeah, that was kind of interesting, almost like watching a long television show. Now I can go on to the next television show. So we actually practice these things, and we go to workshops, we read books, we listen to MP3s. We just gobble it up.
That's great. And what was your motivation for getting into this field? I mean, you had your life experience. You could have said, I've learned all these things, and my relationships are enriched because of it. What made you want to speak to people about it and get into the aspect of teaching and training?
Mm-hmm. It is based upon my life experience. As Jean said, I've gone through 2 divorces, and I can say that it doesn't get any easier. The second one wasn't any better than the first. So sometimes I think in life we're motivated out of pain. And I did not want to have other people have that same pain that I did. And so when Diane and I were in relationship together and seeing how great it can be when you have tools, it was just natural to want to share that. And so we wrote our book, Madly in Love Forever, together. It was a great experience. It was easy to write. We took chapters and then we edited each other's chapters. And so it's out of that desire to help other people avoid divorce, avoid families breaking up, and the key factor is communication. If you can communicate well with another person, you can get through just about anything.
Okay, I have another question that came up while I was listening to you. You have a background as a lawyer, and there's a certain kind of communication style that you develop in that field. Did you ever find yourself in your relationship saying things like, I object, or order in the living room, I rest my case?
With Diane, I'm always saying, I have the right to not sleep on the couch tonight. I paid for half of that bed in there. I'm standing up for my rights. Law school was an incredible learning experience. It was fascinating to me, just studying the law. Being a lawyer was not as fascinating. Very, very long hours, getting into a lot of nitpicky things, but I loved the training. And for me, I have a multitude of communication styles. I can do that business. I was a law professor, so I can be very formal and do the question and answer thing. But I also like the informal, and one of my goals in the next year or so is to actually start doing some stand-up comedy.
Nice. I love it. So this is just a little more of a fun question, so we can benefit from your wisdom. If you could go back in time, any question that involves time traveling, you know it's going to be good. If you could go back in time and speak to your 20-year-old self, what advice would you give him about relationships?
Grow up quickly, man. Get these next 20 years out of the way. It's a good question. I would say if I can go back and speak to my 20-year-old, I would tell him, I said, man, get your ego out of the picture. You don't need to be right all the time. It's better to be in love than to be right. And so many times in my relationships, it was about being right, looking good, protecting my image, instead of being vulnerable and humble and just saying, wow, and getting in touch with my feelings. Another experience I'll share with you is that I did a men's initiation weekend called the New Warriors through the Mankind Project. And that was an incredible experience because it made me realize that I was out of touch with my own feelings. So how can you communicate? How could I communicate what's going on for me if I'm not in touch with what's going on for me?
Right.
So my 20-year-old was way out of touch with his feelings, and certainly then was not able to communicate it to my partners.
Very nice. And where can people find out more about the book that you and then Diane have written, Madly in Love Forever?
Madly in Love Forever. Diane, I believe it's going to be on sale at Revelations. It's in Revelations.
Valentine's Day sale.
Valentine's Day sale.
You can order any version of it if you just go to madlyinloveforever.com. It's Kindle, MP3, you name it, any sort of technology.
CD,
Yeah.
softback.
Yeah. So, yeah. But there are some copies right now in Revelations, too.
All right, fantastic. Let's give our speaker a hand once again.